Hi everybody, I'm Jack the Rambling Raconteur, and I hope you're doing well. I was going to do a quick tag video for this last Tag Tuesday of 2020, and it's a special one for me because it's the How to Adapt a Book Tag Redux. It was originally created by Ryan at Seeking Stories, and he was kind enough to tag me in his video, so I'll include his video in the description box below. But Ryan was also the first subscriber to my channel who wasn't a personal friend or family member, as far as I can tell. And so there's a very real sense in which he sort of like invited me to sit down at his table in the cafeteria on the first day of school and booktube for me. So thank you on both counts, Ryan, and I really mean that. Prompt 1. Which book most deserves an adaptation? Prometheus Bound by Aeschylus. It's a brilliant Greek tragedy from the 5th century. Prompt 2. Which medium best suits this book? A movie. It doesn't need to be drawn out into a miniseries or anything, but there is a possibility for a sequel, which I'll talk about at the end. Prompt 3. What are you most excited about in this hypothetical adaptation? And it's that Prometheus Bound, despite being written by Aeschylus, who seems to usually be considered like sort of the most conservative and traditional of the, Athenian tragedians, the play is revolutionary in its sensibilities and in not necessarily in what it tries to achieve. It is very much a Greek tragedy with a basic chorus, just a handful of characters on stage, just a couple of key speaking roles, but the sensibilities are revolutionary. It does not feel like it's written by, the constant apologist for Athenian tradition. And it's startling in terms of some of the dialogue and some of the just the passion that seems to underlie the characters. And I think it works well in a modern adaptation. I think it would work very well. Plus, with a modern adaptation, you get the cool special effects. There's an amazing scene at the end that clearly could not have been done on an Athenian stage, and I'm always curious what they did for that, and we'll talk about that at the end. But with a film, you could do the special effects that make it look interesting and believable. But the other aspect is that there's a weird sense of like humanity to a number of the Titans and the Olympians that we don't normally find either in Greek myths or necessarily even in the plays by like Euripides. Euripides builds these very human characters, but the gods of Euripides aren't necessarily, they're the deus ex machina. They're almost intentionally fantastic. And here, there's just an intense humanity from Prometheus. So super quickly, the Promethean myth is a very famous one. Prometheus is one of the Titans who sides with Zeus and the Olympians in their overthrow of Kronos and the ruling Titans. And Kronos is a monster, but Zeus is then revealed to be a monster. And Prometheus takes pity on humans, brings down fire. In Aeschylus' adaptation, also, perhaps teaches humans certain things about mathematics or language, different things like that. And meanwhile, what is Zeus doing? Well, Zeus is going around assaulting everyone he can find. And that is made explicit in the play with the character of Io. And then in vengeance for Zeus assaulting all of these, these women and these nymphs and such, other Olympians torture them then. And so Aeschylus is presenting this really fascinating worldview. Again, this is from like the traditional Athenian. So one of the passages that sort of gets at what is going on in this play, and perhaps would convince more people to read it, is this section at the end. So Hermes is there as a key character, and he sort of is almost like this lawyer or salesman. There's really this like lawyer aspect to Hermes, where he's the mouthpiece for Zeus. Zeus isn't in the play, and Hermes is there trying to say, Zeus is going to do this to you. Zeus is going to do this bad thing to you. Zeus is going to do this bad thing to you. Just give in. Just give in. He's trying to persuade and con Prometheus into giving up some secret that might destroy Zeus. And Prometheus, after Hermes lists all of these terrible things that are going to happen to him, the chorus of Oceanids who are hanging out there with Prometheus say, "To our mind the words of Hermes fail not of the mark, for he enjoins thee to let self-will go and follow after prudent counsels. Him hearken, for error in the wise is shame." And then this is Prometheus' response. "These are stale tidings I foreknew. Therefore, since suffering is the due, a foe must pay his foes. Let curled lightnings clasp and clash, and close upon my limbs loud crash. The thunder and fierce throes of savage winds convulse calm air. The emboweled blast earth's roots uptear, and toss beyond its bars. The rough surge, till the roaring deep in one devouring deluge sweep the pathway of the stars. Finally, let him fling my form down whirling gulfs, the central storm of being. Let me lie, plunged in the black Tartarian gloom, yet yet his sentence shall not doom this deathless self to die. You just what? There's just this massive, repudiation of fear and of the terror that Zeus represents and that Hermes as an enabler represents. And I just, I find that sensibility it speaks to the 20th century, it speaks to the 21st century, and it's amazing. Just this self-will and this confidence. And with that, the Oceanids who were begging, sort of like, hey, Prometheus, like bad things are going to happen. Just let's give in. Hermes then tells the chorus, get out of there. And the Oceanids now respond, words which might work persuasion speak, if thou must counsel me, nor seek. Thus, like a stream in spate, to uproot mine honor. Dost thou dare urge me to baseness? I will bear, with him all blows of fate. For false forsakers I despise. At treachery my gorge doth rise. I spew it forth with hate. And so Prometheus has convinced the Oceanids to join him in that whole litany that Hermes has listed. I think that's just, there is, as I said, a certain modern sensibility that I think works and holds true in the play, and I would love to see it in a movie. So prompt 4, which actors or actresses should portray characters? Well, if we want someone with integrity and force, but also this like intelligence, I was thinking Sterling K. Brown. He was in the very beginning of, and then like one other critical scene of Black Panther. He was the king, not King T'Challa, the previous king's brother, who was living in like Oakland, and then was the father of Michael B. Jordan's character. He was also he's in This Is Us. He's in an American Crime Story. He played Chris Darden. So I think he's a great actor who would bring that. Hephaestus is a very reluctant Olympian. He's agreeing with Zeus. He's agreeing with the Olympians, but he's not happy about it. He has to kind of be persuaded and forced to bind Prometheus to the mountain in the Caucasus range. So I think Oscar Isaac would do that well. A key role is Oceanus, who is this like indolent sort of appeasement titan. This titan who is just willing to just let things continue on because he's not really affected by it. And I think someone who could portray that character well and that quality well would be William Hurt. Io, I think, who's a victim of Zeus, to give her character a little bit more vitality than perhaps Aeschylus puts into the play. There would have to be more lines, of course. Sophia Boutella, who's this astonishing actress and also dancer, would be great in that role. Hermes, as I mentioned, is a real just scumbag. He's the worst, and he's a lawyer. There's a line where Prometheus says, where is it? Oh, he's telling others, go thou and worship, fold thy hands in prayer, and be the dog that licks the foot of power. Nothing care I for Zeus, yea, less than naught. Let him do what he will and sway the world his little hour. He has not to long to lord it among the gods. And then here comes Hermes. Oh, here his runner comes, the upstart's lackey. He'll bring news, a message never doubted, from his master. And Hermes does have, some lines of poetry. He refers to Prometheus, you, the sophistical rogue, the heart of Gaul, the renegade of heaven, to short-lived men, purveyor of prerogatives and titles, fire thief. Dost hear me? I've a word for thee. And so someone who I think portrays a lawyer with just a lot of energy and, a scumbag with a lot of energy would be Leslie Odom Jr., who was brilliant as Aaron Burr in the Hamilton adaptation. A character who's not in Prometheus Bound, but would set up a brilliant sequel with Prometheus Unbound, which is lost to us from Aeschylus, but Percy Shelley did his own version, which has some issues and is weird. It's a real mind warp. But Prometheus's wife, Asia, is a critical character in Prometheus Unbound, and I think it would be good to have her present in Prometheus Unbound. Perhaps among the chorus of Oceanids, perhaps not. But I think she would be a good character to include, and that would be Gemma Chan. And then it would be useful to introduce Thetis, and I'll talk at the end about the slant I want to take on this particular play. So prompt 5, who should direct the adaptation? Well, it could go in a lot of different directions. I think Rian Johnson would do some amazing like special effects, like his throne room scene in The Last Jedi reveals he has the chops to set up the sort of Olympian and Titanic clash going on. Ryan Coogler, of course, with Black Panther, he has the right sensibilities, I think, to pull this off. With sort of the interpretation I take in Prometheus Bound and my personal interpretation of the Prometheus myth, I think Ava DuVernay could also do some amazing things with it. So Prom 6, which scene are you most excited about seeing in this adaptation? And that's the end where Prometheus basically, refuses to give in. The Oceanids join him, and Zeus sends lightning down, and the Caucasus Mountain where Prometheus is chained up splits open, and Prometheus and the Oceanids are like swallowed up in it. So that entire scene of defiance, and then what Zeus's response is, I think that would be just amazing to see actually filmed, not just staged, because of how Aeschylus' vision, that is 2,500 years old practically at this point, could be brought to life. Prom 7, what are you most nervous about with this adaptation? And then that would be that the Clash of Wrath of the Titans teams are involved. Prompt 8, let's get real. Do you think this book has a shot at ever being adapted? Anything's possible. I mean, why not? I'm very pro Prometheus and pro Greek tragedy, so sure. Prompt 9, on that note, do you think there's a chance it will be a good adaptation? See questions 7 and 8. As long as those teams stay away, I think it would be great. So prompt 10, describe your ideal version of this adaptation. This is just the Jack take on the Prometheus myth, which is that Prometheus brings fire. And Zeus, of course, is always terrified of this concept of someone having a son that will end his reign. And it's interesting, this concept of fire, that Prometheus brings fire to humans, but who is it that actually keeps fire? Like, it's one thing to bring the spark, to bring fire, but if you don't keep the fire, if you lose it, it means nothing. It is totally purposeless. And so my interpretation of the myth is actually there's like a really strong, interesting way in which it can be used to show the value, and the power of women within a civilization, within a society, and how necessary and vital they are in any endeavor. Because Prometheus might bring the fire, but it was the hearth that keeps the fire going, that maintains the fire, that keeps that sort of sacred flame alive through the generations. And so that just sort of that personal interpretation. And then this idea that Zeus governs by fear and Prometheus represents sort of knowledge, but in the Prometheus Unbound movement, then it's revealed that it's not just knowledge, but that even more powerful than knowledge, of course, is love. And I mean, we're doing some shades of Albus Dumbledore here, where love is the most powerful magic, but or St. Paul from Corinthians. But this idea, starting to push in this idea of it is not fear that will conquer, it is love that will conquer. And so introducing those concepts, I think, is really important. So that's my interpretation. That's what I would be pushing. Who am I going to tag? Well, Lukash is always going on about different movies he likes, and some of them I agree with, some of them I haven't seen. So I would tag Lukash to Cruel Reader's Thesis. I'd be curious what Sequoia 97 sometimes talks about, like books and then film adaptations of those books in his videos, so I'd love to hear what he thinks about it. I don't know that I've heard Alan Braswell talk a lot about movies, but Alan at the Lonely Bookshelf, I think he could have some interesting thoughts. And then Yasmin at To the Lit House, I think she could as well have some interesting thoughts. So I'd be interested in what they would have to say. There are many others. If you haven't done this tag, please do. I'm fascinated by your thoughts. Thanks, everyone.